But we're going to dive right into our first ever Innovate Work virtual event. If I'd love to see by show of hands that this isn't a live event anymore. I can't say that, but if you haven't attended an Innovate Work event before, it's typically an event that we do in person, bringing the business, leadership, HR community together to talk about what's happening in the workplace and how to better that experience. And we're excited to obviously bring it virtually, understanding that getting together is not possible today. So by introduction, my name is Rob Catalano, Chief Engagement Officer of WorkTango. My co-founder of Innovate Work, Bill.
Hey, I'm Bill Banham. I am the founder of the HR Gazette and co-founder of Innovate Work.
And yeah, we're really excited to bring you the first virtual event. I'm not going to lie, this could be a train wreck. We've never done this before. We're going to figure it out as we go, and just super excited to get going here. Before we dive in, a few things is that we have a goal. When Bill and I started this, that we wanted three major things to happen as a result of these events. One is people to be educated. That's why we've brought in some fantastic speakers with great insights so we can learn from them, to engage. So whether it's engaging with each other on the chat, usually it's in person, but engaging even with each other after these types of events. And the last part is to be inspired to act or do something differently. Bill, anything to add in terms of Innovate Work and a bit of our past?
Yeah, absolutely. And Rob, I'm just seeing these numbers of attendees just go up and up. So that's super exciting for today. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Before we do go any further, just a big thank you to our supporters, who include Gallagher Benefits Canada, High Road Human Capital, Lighthouse Labs, and Thought Benefits. And this event today is brought to you by WorkTango and the HR Gazette. If you're interested in getting involved as a sponsor of any of the future events that we are doing, we've got events happening May 13th, May 26th, June 10th, and also now looking to do events with a UK focused audience in June and an Australian focused audience, which will be pretty exciting. If you'd like to get involved with any of those, please do reach out to me or to Rob.
Perfect. Last few things is just today's agenda. Bill and I are the filler, so while people get in and get past after their lunch, jumping on, but we're going to dive right into the content shortly with our HR Passion series. So 4 wonderful speakers, 9 minutes, and to get some really great points across in a short period of time. And then we're going to go through our panel and questions and get everyone involved from that perspective. These are the 4 speakers for HR Passion series. We always joke that, if you can put your snooze on, usually 9 minutes, that's a little more sleep. But imagine what you can do or learn and be inspired on in 9 minutes. We also told our speakers that if they go over 9 minutes, we will be annoying as that snooze alarm and come in. And I'm not sure what we're going to do, but we want to make sure that we keep in our time. So what we also thought is, Bill and I don't have to introduce them. We're actually going to let them introduce themselves. Before we move on, Bill, anything else before I introduce Jane?
No, just I hope everybody enjoys the session today. And if you do enjoy it, there's going to be a follow-up email in the next couple of days with details in terms of how to register for the next event.
Awesome. All right. Well, without further ado, our first speaker, Jane Watson, Senior Director of People Partners at Click. Jane, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rob. Great to be here with everybody today, and I'm so excited that I get to kick things off. And so I'm going to jump right in. I want to talk today about how we can help our organizations to evolve through tumultuous times. And so here we are, all of us, encountering a situation that I'm going to guess none of us ever imagined that we would deal with in the course of our careers. And we're all dealing with it together. But although we're all experiencing the pandemic right now, I know that the experiences that we're having individually and within our organizations are not the same. So I've spent the last several weeks talking to employees, to coworkers, to friends and family, and to other HR folks in my network. And the variety of experiences is pretty staggering. There are folks who have really embraced the benefits of working remotely. I've met lots of my coworkers' pets in the last few weeks, which is awesome. There are also people, though, who are facing layoffs in their organizations. They're having to make difficult choices, and in some cases, there are existential threats to their organizations because of the economic impact of the pandemic. I've talked to people who feel really isolated right now. And I've also talked to people who are overwhelmed with the amount of interaction that they're having over Zoom with coworkers, with their friends, with family, and they're actually needing more alone time. And then I've talked with folks as well who largely it's been business as usual, and they've continued, albeit virtually, to try to focus on project delivery in their organizations. So recognizing that there's a lot of people on the webinar today, and so I imagine all of us are having a whole variety of different experiences. What I wanted to talk about was trying to remember, regardless of our current circumstances, that there is also opportunity to be had in our organizations at this time. And a lot of that is related to a question that I've seen over and over again in the last several weeks, and I'm guessing that you have as well. This is all over my social media feeds. It's in my inbox, in the subject line of all of these emails that I keep getting, these articles people are sending me. What will our post-pandemic workplaces look like? What will the future after the pandemic look like? And I'd like to propose that this isn't the best question for us to consider. Instead, I'm going to propose a slightly different question that I want to talk about for the rest of my time today, and that is, what can we do right now to evolve into the organization that we want to become? And the reason that this question, in my view, is a lot more helpful is that nobody knows the answer to the first question. You know, this is truly a time where best practices don't exist because nobody has any practice at dealing with the current situation. And so asking ourselves what the future of work will look like, I mean, it's really truly anybody's guess. So let's focus on what we can control. And so to talk a little bit more about why right now is in particular a great opportunity to do this, I want to talk about this model. Some of you will be familiar with this. It's from William Bridges' book, Managing Transitions, which is a classic. And his basic thesis in this book, Bridges, is that there's a difference between change and transition. He sees change as something that happens in the conditions outside of us, external to us as individuals, that we have to react to. So something like a pandemic, but also it could be something good, like having a baby. He contrasts that with transitions, which he describes as something that is an internal psychological process that all of us go through in response to a change. And I think those are really important distinctions to make, because in his transition model, he talks about the fact that these three phases need to occur for us to move through a change effectively. And so any change results in the first phase of a transition, which is an ending phase, right? So we have to let go of things. We have to give things up, whether they are tangible, you know, like being able to go to a restaurant, being able to go into work, or more intangible, like aspects of our identity. So if you're, you know, a new parent, you might be giving up on the identity of having a lot of freedom to go out and, you know, do whatever you want on the weekend. You also are probably giving up sleep. So that's something you're letting go of. And of course, after any ending, there's also a beginning where we move into a new phase. We embrace new behaviors and new identities. And so, you know, again, going back to our example of becoming a new parent, you embrace your identity as a parent, as a person who, you know, has a larger family, and what that looks like. But what's critical is that between endings and beginnings in a transition, we all go through this neutral zone. And this neutral zone is a time where we have let go of aspects of our identity, of behaviors, of habits, of, you know, things that we formerly embraced. And we're in a state of confusion. We're in a search for a new identity, for new behaviors, new habits that will serve us. And Bridges talks about the fact that you cannot have an effective new beginning unless you let the neutral zone unfold, unless you go through this middle phase. And that is a time of confusion. It can be a time of a lot of undirected energy, but it can also be an incredible time of creativity, because we're literally freed from some of the constraints that our previous identity and patterns and habits you know, put around us, and we can experiment with new ways of being and seeing the world and ourselves. And so right now, all of us are in the neutral zone. everyone is here because we're like swimmers in the middle of a lake. We don't see the far shore yet. We don't know what the new beginning is because we're still in the thick of this thing, and we just don't know what things are going to look like afterwards. And so this offers us a unique time in our lives and in our organizations to explore new ways of being, new identities that might serve us in the coming time. And so, what does this actually mean in practice? It's a great model, but how do we apply this? Well, I have a few ideas that I think are, experiments that we can try as HR practitioners at this time. I want to talk them through briefly with you. So the first is to embrace your inner anthropologist. So anthropologists study other cultures. They try to look at things with new eyes. They make the familiar unfamiliar by observing very closely. And so at the moment in our organizations, while communication during a time of uncertainty, super important, and I hope that all of us are really trying to make sure that we're communicating and being transparent, I would really pay attention to how much you're talking, how much you're telling versus how much you're listening and how much you're asking, how much you're noticing what is changing in your organizations and what is not, what you want to hang on to that is new, that is emerging. One example that I've noticed is, generally, not just at work, there's a lot more empathy and caring. I think that people are looking to help one another far more than they normally would. And so that's something that I think we want to hang on to. We want to cherish that. We want to make sure that we're carrying that through into our shared future. I would also suggest looking for positive deviance, which is a term that basically means an outlier in your organization who is doing things well, they're thriving. That phase two, that neutral phase that all of us are in, people are going to be at different stages through that, and they're going to be coping differently. There will be folks who are doing really well. There will be teams that seem to have figured out this whole remote work thing better than other teams. Pay attention to that, find out what they're doing right, find out how they are seeing things and thinking through, and see if you can spread that within your organization. A metaphor I've found really useful is, instead of thinking about being an architect, instead of building things when we don't yet know what foundation we're building on, look at what is already sprouting in your organization, what is already there, and what you can cultivate like a gardener. Small experiments, I think, is the way to go right now. Things are changing super fast. So org-wide initiatives, they may be irrelevant in 3 weeks or 3 months. It's really anyone's guess. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to collaborate with teams, to test ideas. If there's something that you've been thinking about, maybe see if you can do a really small sort of iterative experiment with a couple of teams, get their feedback, see how you can collaborate with them to evolve that. And maybe that ends up being something more org-wide in the future as things stabilize. Everyone knows the story of the Trojan horse. I really like talking about the idea of Trojan mice. What I mean by that is, think smaller, think how you can embed things in your everyday behaviors. I've talked to a lot of people who have said their diversity and inclusion programs have been deprioritized or put on pause during this time, which is really frustrating. And what I've talked about with a couple of them is, instead of thinking about that as being permanently on pause or as stepping away from it, what principles or behaviors can they take from that program and embed it into all of the other things that we're doing day to day? So instead of making it what we do, making it how we do everything day to day. And finally, pay attention to habits. So really, I know we talk about culture like it's something that we can design or draft or, speak into being, but behavior is what turns into culture. So we behave our culture into being through all of our everyday interactions with one another and our behaviors day to day. So our post-pandemic workplaces are going to be the result of our habits right now. And so pay attention to what habits you want and what you don't to contribute to your culture in the future. And then finally, before I wrap up, I just want to remind you that all of us are also in the neutral zone. So as HR folks, we're often tasked with helping our organizations cope with change. with emotions, with challenges that they're having as a result of those circumstances. But we also have to think about ourselves. So don't think that you're going to change the whole world right now. Adjust your expectations. Think about this like a marathon, not a sprint. And really take this as an opportunity to cultivate the skill of sitting in that discomfort, that phase 2 that we often try to rush people through, and really focus on working with what is. So that's it for me. Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce our next speaker, and I threatened as we were getting on the call before the webinar started that I was going to introduce him with a fun fact that may or may not be true. He can tell us. So Dr. Michael Mousseau, who is National Wellbeing and Engagement Consultant at Gallagher, and an interesting and definitely true fact about him is that he was raised by wolves. Take it away, Michael.
Well, I appreciate that. We will find out if I was or was not. Well, thank you for having me, everybody. And I'm going to talk today a little bit about what's going on with well-being with your employees, and through COVID, and looking forward to what transitions may or may not look like back to work. And, you know, we know COVID-19 has really firmly established itself as probably one of the most, or if not the most, disruptive events in modern history. And during these times, disruptions to business and employees' lives, employers really had to address the effects of the unknown and known stressors. But to really define our path forward, these stressors must be addressed now, and their impacts must be understood. So that's why I want to start today's talk with the theme of tomorrow's now. The actions we take today will really go a long way in ensuring that the employees, who really are the backbone of your organizations, are well suited and ready to come back. So in a world where change really has been the only constant, we must make sure that we're putting our most important assets, your people, first. And investing in people has many, many aspects to it. Because when people come to work, when you come to work, or maybe it's your kitchen table right now, you come as individuals. And people don't come to work in parts. They come with all those complexities of life. Gosh, how true that is today. My dog's barking right behind me right now. So the complexities are true. But what now? How can we effectively face that future with confidence? So Stephen Covey, acclaimed author, talent leadership coach, I'm sure you guys have heard of, challenges organizations leaders to begin with the end in mind. And to begin with the end in mind means to begin with a clear understanding of your destination. By knowing where you're going, you can kind of better understand with where you are right now, so that steps you take are in the right direction. And in this case, maybe it's a successful transition back to work, whatever that may look like. So, of course, we know COVID-19 has put an incredible amount of uncertainty into what the future may or may not look like. But at Gallagher, we like to run towards problems, not away from them. And it's actually one of our central tenets. And building people strategies today will really drive engagement and business growth for tomorrow. And this core model has not changed. It may be just the way we are delivering. So really, I'm going to touch on 4 points today. I'm going to talk a little bit about emotional well-being, some unforeseen consequences of quarantine, touch on resiliency, and then end, of course, with communication and leadership topics. It's important, again, to note that even before COVID-19 started, we were dealing with epidemic levels of stress and anxiety, right? And today, really, that fear of the unknown actually might be more significant on your employees' health than the threat of the disease itself. But this return to whatever work might look like is going to be a slow trickle. And I really think that the anticipatory anxiety for this is really going to be difficult on employees. And really all I mean by anticipatory anxiety is really referring to that fear or the dwell of the unknown. And if we know anything about COVID-19, it is we are completely packed full of unknowns, and especially regarding this return to work of whatever that may look like. And this is going to be difficult on employees, as it no doubt already has been. So when I talk about emotional well-being, it's really that ability to practice stress management techniques, be resilient, generate positive, productive feelings. When we shift occurs, though, anticipatory anxiety is this fear for an extended period of time that your employees may be imagining this future situation or perceiving. In times like this, anxiety may be stirred up and challenging these employees' ability to really engage in their emotional well-being. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is you can calm this anticipatory anxiety by, by opening up listening channels, or formalize ways to hear your employees' concerns or questions, by centralizing information so that all messaging really remains constant throughout the organization. It really helps prevent misinformation. Also, there's a need to empower these frontline managers to really be part of this solution moving forward by providing consistent, empathetic messaging, right? So the employees have something really predictable and trustworthy that they can rely on. However, just remember, what works in good times also works in bad times. So leading with authenticity and bringing that whole self to work every day really enable others to bring their whole selves to work every day. And this will lead to really improved engagement in your organization, improved well-being, and performance during and long after the crisis passed. But as I mentioned above, this is going to be a slow trickle. This won't be like a light switch, and there are going to be many scars that are going to be made through this time. There are going to be many lingering problems that may arise long before, after, or even during transition. So I recently wrote an article being published in our Gallagher Better Works Insights report on the unforeseen consequences of quarantine. With my PhD being in pain and neuroscience and addiction, I took a deep dive into the consequences of these in quarantine. And really what it brings up is addiction and obesity becoming even more prevalent and important discussion points for you employers to consider. Some individuals in your organization may start struggling to maintain healthy habits, maybe yourselves as well, right? That previously just seemed so innate. Issues relating to addiction and weight management may surface or resurface as a consequence of the current situation. But we have to know that those suffering from addiction, whether it be opioids, alcohol, or hey, even sugar, right, will continue their behaviors despite these inherently negative consequences. But compounded with these feelings of isolation and that worry of the unknown, these addictions can really have an overwhelming effect on people's well-being. But you guys can help by communicating proper resources and ensuring your employees are not alone will go a long way. But I really want you to remember that these issues won't just go away when business changes. They actually could intensify. As loneliness fuels addiction, addiction can in turn fuel loneliness, which really engages a vicious cycle. And as we look forward, it is of utmost importance for organizations to stay connected with their employees and devise strategies to ensure that social connectedness, as these social interactions are extremely potent deterrents of addiction. Also important to remember are the connections between employee engagement, well-being, and resiliency. What is important at work and home has very significant impacts on the employee's overall life and well-being. But what is resiliency is quite a buzzword today. We're hearing it everywhere. And I won't go into much detail on building resiliency, but I want to arm you leaders with simplistic definition to really just help you discuss this important topic with your employees. So really, resiliency is the ability to withstand, recover, and grow in the face of stressors and changing demands. So think of it as this tree that's on the screen right now. Resiliency gives you the ability to have your roots firmly in the ground and be able to bend in the face of the storm. You might lose a couple leaves along the way, but you won't break, right? So these resilient employees make resilient organizations. And I think as leaders, we need to realize that their support systems that they had developed at work, their colleagues, friends, really fueled their productivity and energy. That's probably lost right now. So the social connectedness and interpersonal support is a powerful predictor of human resiliency. So I really urge you as HR professionals to, if there ever was a time to be promoting this resiliency or emotional well-being, it's now. But remember, as a leader, we really urge you to put your oxygen mask on first. You simply cannot help your workforce if you yourself are struggling. By recognizing that you cannot develop programs and processes to reduce these negative impacts and stress and promote individual and organizational resilience if you yourselves are not well in the first place. Which leads to my final topic on leadership and communications. The most resilient organizations are really characterized by strong leadership and their ability to change, their ability to adapt in changing environments. Much like we maybe remember our favorite teachers going through school with love and gratitude. Very well, the opposite could be completely true in a crisis like this and can cause lasting organizational effects. Through times like this is where brands really show what they're made of. And it starts with you as leaders being role models of this change. Focus on those most important assets, your people. Make sure your leadership is embodying the culture of the organization, that their messages really do match their behaviors. Because remember, culture is made up of what we can and cannot see. Leadership, messaging, and behavior will really set the tone for how cared for employees feel during this difficult period. And finally, most importantly, be compassionate and empathetic leaders. Expressing compassion and empathy are powerful tactics that increase positive emotions and create lasting, engaged, collaborative environments, especially through these circumstances today. Now, I ask you to pull out your phones. I know you're already searching me on LinkedIn, and scan this QR code here, because it's important to remember as we transition back to work, it may not be as smooth on employees as we think, and tomorrow does start now. But most importantly, we want to help you define your blueprint for tomorrow. So again, I ask you to take out your phone, scan the barcode with your camera, browse the ample resources we have for you at Gallagher and our team, or connect with myself or Chris in our emails below. We just want to offer you an ear to listen and help you discover and design your blueprint for tomorrow. So again, thank you for having me. And I am going to turn it over to Katrina. So Katrina, again, this could be true or not. She is actually an original member of the Spice Girls, and this is quite impressive resume, she's actually the first female NBA player. So in light of these unbelievable resumes, I can't wait to hear more about it, Katrina.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everybody. I wasn't actually going to reveal that to the end of my talk, so it's a little bit of a spoiler alert, but that's okay. We're going to roll with it. I hope everyone's getting a lot out of what we're sharing so far. I'm going to jump into screen share. Okay, let's talk about growth mindset, and specifically on nurturing a learning culture through this mindset. A little bit about me to kick things off. I grew up with, I was diagnosed at the age of 8 with dyslexia. And what that meant for me was that I struggled to read and write at the same level as my peers. I struggled with math too. Ultimately, school wasn't for me. So that led to a lot of self-limiting beliefs. And those self-limiting beliefs carried with me into my early adulthood when I chose my first career. And the first career that I chose was one that I thought would be safe for the skills that I had naturally, which was to be social and creative. So I chose to be a hairstylist. And it was that choice of becoming a hairstylist that decided that there was something that was going to throw a loophole in my plans. And that was that I developed really severe eczema. So it meant that I had to actually change paths and go back to school. And going back to school as an adult is where everything changed for me. I learned that I actually liked learning and that I could achieve grades that I never thought possible. It ultimately shifted my mindset. And this is such a powerful thing that it's something I want to ensure each of you has the opportunity to do for yourselves and in your organizations. Another really important aspect of this mindset is the reality that I'm now a parent. I'm a new mom, and that means that as a new mom, I actually have this amazing opportunity to practice growth mindset every day. This is Lincoln. He's 9 months old, and I'm on maternity leave right now, enjoying the experience of being with him. But it was also such a privilege to be here today to share with you. So, besides Lincoln, why now? Why is this so important to us? Well, this mindset actually helps us guide through some of the uncertainty that we've been talking about. It helps us to actually learn these new ways of working together. And in some cases, we have to develop new skills real fast. Maybe the roles that we were doing aren't relevant anymore. So this mindset propels us through all of these challenges. What do I mean when I say growth mindset? There's a lot on this slide, but really what I'm getting at is that our belief and our focus has so much to do with how we think about what we learn. So in a growth mindset, we believe that we can build skills. And this was the big shift that I experienced when I went back to school. There's also this emphasis with the growth mindset on when you focus on getting better instead of focusing on looking good and getting it right the first time. So with a growth mindset, we actually don't try to get it perfect. We recognize that mistakes happen and we celebrate that because that's how we know we get better, which leads to the 4 key ingredients for growth. one of those being effort. We understand that effort's useful in a growth mindset, and we embrace challenges as our second ingredient because we know that they're actually a great opportunity to improve. When we make mistakes, rather than being fearful of that or shying away from it, we use it to learn because that's what's needed in order to propel us forward. And then feedback is something that we relish, looking for it and also offering it up. So you might be looking at this and saying like, cool, but there's a couple of these things I'm not so good at yet, and that's okay, because we all oscillate between fixed and growth. So the challenge is to move yourself towards growth more of the time. Here's some of the ways that we brought this to life at Shopify. In our culture and our communication norms, when we talk about growth mindset, it's embedded into our fabric. So it's one of our culture values because we see it every day where people are expressing this mindset, and that is to be a constant learner. And it's also just how we talk to each other. So one of the things that was happening on my team really regularly before I went off on leave was a concept of Friday fails, where we'd share with each other every Friday things that didn't go well. So when we made an error through that week with something we tried, we made sure to tell each other about it because we wanted A, other people to learn from it, and B, to model what it meant to be a curious learner. In our talent programs, we teach for this mindset. So right when you join, when you become a member of the Shopify team, we teach about the mindset so that you understand exactly what it is, but also get a chance to learn how to practice it. Because we want our leaders to be growth mindset oriented themselves and to create the conditions where their team members can be. And then with our systems and work practices, we've got some really neat ways of helping people express their growth mindset in just regular work. Example being, we do something called Fresh Eyes, where if you're working on a project, you actually share elements of the project way before it's done and often to get feedback and collaborate with others so that you don't ultimately get too stuck or fixed on the outcome and focus in on it being a great product for Shopify. So a little bit of an out-of-the-box story to really demonstrate the power of this mindset is that recently, when we were all encouraged to work from home, even though I've been home working on being a mom, what I was able to do was see how my colleagues were handling so many of these changes. And I noticed that there were some teams that were going to be much more impacted than others. And our culinary team was one really good example. The folks who make amazing meals in our offices. And because of this change, they no longer could do that, at least not in that same way. So they were empowered to come up with an interesting way to serve the business. And what was really amazing was that our leaders reiterated that while your roles may change, it doesn't mean that you can't still offer value. Let me quickly wrap up so that you're left with some pro tips. If you want to embrace this mindset, ultimately what's important is that you model it. So we need to be able to demonstrate what it looks like. So we really want to model this mindset regularly. And then you want to be able to teach as well. So for those that lead talent programs, it's an awesome opportunity to embed growth mindset content into your onboarding, into your leadership development. And then reinforcing this mindset in your culture, in the way that you talk to each other, the way that you behave, making it normal, like doing things like Friday fails. And lastly, celebrate, because it's really hard to learn new things all the time. And right now, as Jane mentioned, there's so much we don't know. All of us are in this learning mode. So it's time that we celebrate the small wins. With that, I'm going to transition out of screen share, and I'm going to just share a little bit of information for you that you can access in the chat to take some of this information with you, which I'm really glad I did, because if I cut off at all in these, you have the chance to take them away. So with that, I'm going to transition over to Alicia, who not only builds trust, but ironically also builds killer sandcastles. At least that's what I've heard. Over to you, Alicia.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Katrina, and thanks so much, everybody, for having me participate today. Super excited to be here sharing all things trust with everybody here. Okay, so I'm here to talk about building trust in uncertain times and how you can anchor your employee engagement strategy on the 8 pillars of trust. So the importance of trust, as we probably have all heard before, different people leaders and HR professionals here on the call, the importance of trust within the workplace. Trust is so needed to really build the cultural foundation within your organization. And it's no surprise that through trust, you have a positive, impactful, and thriving culture. And the characteristics of a healthy culture really allow growth and innovation to happen in areas of the business that you've never really expected. Because at that point in time, when trust is established, you're really working with your teams at a level where there's an element and an environment of safety that allows them to feel brave and open to share ideas, concepts, and different notions that really may not have come forward before without that foundation of trust being there. Multiple different studies have been conducted in different cultures that really do confirm the correlation between trust and worker empowerment within the job environment. Compared with low trust companies, high trust organizations report 50% higher productivity, 13% fewer sick days, 76% higher engagement, 40% less burnout, and 74% less stress. Now, when you think about those statistics, those are powerful numbers. Just think about what you as a team or an organization can accomplish when you have 76% more engagement from your teams and your workforce. Amazing and incredible things can happen that can impact growth, revenue, innovation, and creativity. So if we do the flip side of that coin and we look at what happens when there is a lack of trust, and when trust goes down, speed goes down, and cost goes up. So about 3 years ago, 37% of CEOs were concerned about the lack of trust in businesses, according to a PwC annual global CEO survey. Across industries, that number has now jumped to over 55%. And it's so clear and it's so evident that when employees do not trust their leaders and their management, there's low engagement, high turnover, and reduced innovation throughout the whole organization. And rebuilding trust in uncertain times is not an easy feat, because individuals, they can come to work and they can feel, productive, they can get work done. But when they don't trust their leadership, they begin to question how they fit into the broader picture of the organization. And they have less pride in the organization overall, which then stems into side conversations with other employees and gives them to question their ulterior motives that are happening when they're not in the meetings and in the boardrooms. A lack of trust heavily breeds distractions and side conversations about hidden motives. And it really just starts to weave and tear into relationships within the workforce that really start to break down those building blocks of teamwork, morale, and engagement. And you also see heavily that through the lack of trust, there's that safety net that's taken away. And employees really don't feel comfortable bringing those great, awesome ideas forward because they're afraid that if it's not perceived well within the group, that they're going to be ostracized and not really seen as someone to be, associated with. So lack of trust is very evident when an organization doesn't have that strong foundation. Now, when you take all those elements, when there's not a trustful workspace, and you add chaos and you add uncertainty, such as the times we're in now, those elements are amplified up to 10 times. So it's not just, I just don't feel engaged at work. It's you evidently see the manifestations of what low engagement looks like. You see the manifestations of stress and conflict. Where issues never used to be issues before, you have people that are clearly not seeing eye to eye in conversation and in meetings. And things that are important details are constantly getting slipped through the cracks that never really used to happen before. So these things that used to just be feelings or hunches really do start to have physical manifestations within the workspace when there's uncertainty and chaos that's happening in the environment. And so how do we make this applicable to the state of affairs with COVID-19? So if you think about it, and some of you may have already started to experience and see this in your workspaces through the various Zoom and Blue Jeans meetings, is that it can start off with employees not feeling safe psychologically, physically, and therefore their productivity declines. From there, deliverables get delayed and there's a lack of communication, which then causes confusion with different parties involved. There's disagreements and tension among colleagues and teams. Teams really lose that team spirit and you lose that mentality where it becomes more about I instead of we. There's a fear of job security and decreasing company confidence. So people don't feel like, the company has their best interest at heart, and they may start looking at other opportunities outside of the organization. And that cycle just continues. And so in a time like this, when there's high uncertainty and people just are at a state of kind of a standstill, how can leaders and management really start to rebuild those building blocks of trust within their teams? And so I'm really excited to talk about the engagement and trust framework by David Hossiger, who identified these 8 pillars of trust that really start to break down the barriers that can come to trust when there's times of uncertainty, when there's times of chaos. And it's really important that with trust and with building anything, nothing is ever an overnight success. And the same thing goes along with trust. And so as we kind of go through these characteristics, know that everything is a day-by-day action, and small wins are super, super important to talk about and to share amongst the teams. So clarity. So clarity starts with being honest. Building trust with people is very important because you're destigmatizing the vagueness of any information or context that comes into conversations. And so it's important that you're very clear when you speak, and you're very intentional on the words and the tone and the message that you're sharing. Number 2 is compassion. So think beyond yourself. Think about, am I doing what's best for my team? Am I doing what's best for my employees? And really put yourself in their situation. 3 is character. Having high morals right now is so key as a leadership team, and being able to get people to trust your character and your intentions. Words and actions right now need to be in sync, and that your words need to follow your actions in the things that you share on an organizational level. 4 is competency. And competency in this case isn't what you're knowledgeable in, but what you lack knowledge in. And so especially in the case of COVID-19, if we don't know the answers of when we're returning to work, what the future is going to look like, we don't have to pretend that we do. We can give our best estimates, and we can provide the best safety nets for our teams based on the knowledge and insights we have from specialists around the world. And that's okay. We don't have to be perfect in our answers if there's something that we don't know. And so being able to admit that and being humble about that is so key and so important. Number 5 is commitment. Great leadership demands sacrifice. If you are expecting your employees to make a sacrifice for you in whatever way that you've asked of them, they're expecting the same from you. So make sure that they see that type of action being reiterated in the actions that you and the leadership team are taking. 6 is connection. Being able to make a connection is really the start of building trust within relationships. In every interaction, you are either building connection or you're decreasing connection. So it's important that you take the time to really be empathetic and really use that time to connect and be at where that person's level is. If someone is having a bad day, relate to them, understand where they're coming from, and give them that leverage that they need in order to get where they need to go in order to be successful. The 7th element is contribution. You have to deliver results in order to be trusted, and you have to deliver those results with honesty and integrity in what you do. It is so important that the team sees how you're working, how you're helping to drive the business forward, and making sure that the contributions are thoughtful both on the employee side as well as business continuity. And the last but definitely not least is consistency, which is probably one of the most important pillars without this framework, because it really does give meaning and truth to the rest of the framework, in the sense that your small actions consistently matter. It's not about making one big grand gesture to show people that you have the situation under control and that you're taking the team in the right direction. It's really those small everyday actions that people can trust and lean on you for, to know that you have their best interest in mind. And so getting started, of course, the 8 pillars of trust is a massive framework where you could look at it and say, oh my goodness, how am I ever going to start with this? Where do I even begin? And getting started is really by first and foremost leading by example. You don't have to have a leader or management title in order to start leading by example within your group. Take the time and really learn how you can be more clear, more consistent, and use those tactics that we just spoke about to help others understand what those are. Lean in and lean up. work with your teams, especially if you know that they are not in a place where they are the most productive and they're just having a harder time getting used to the new circumstances. Share resources, share talks, share whatever you can, and be that example for others so that they know how to follow that example and be that for other people. Leverage your network. As we're all here today as part of this amazing HR and management leadership community, leverage that community and network to get answers, to share resources, to share best practices, because this is where it all starts. And the next is learn new technology to assist you. As we've probably seen over the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of different video and team sharing platforms. Use them to ensure that you're connecting with your team and you're being open and transparent in the best way possible. So in closing, these are the 4 things I want to leave you with today regarding trust. Number 1, trust does not come overnight. So be easy on yourself. Start with the small wins and do actions where you know it will count. 2, work with your leaders. Leadership is also struggling at a time like this. So if you're able to lean in, share your resources, share best practices that you've seen working in other areas, make sure you're helping bridge that gap for them. 3, be positive. In every situation, there is a silver lining. So make sure that you're able to help share that positivity throughout the team so that they're able to be uplifted and motivated. And 4, rely on your resources. There are tons of resources, groups, chats, and teams that are specifically focused on helping people during this time. So use those resources, tap into them, and make sure that you're sharing those best practices with your other network and really coming together as a community to get through this part together. Thank you everybody so much for your time. It was such a great pleasure to speak with all of you, and I hope you all walk away with something new. Here's my social media handle so that we can connect offline if you have any questions or want to talk further. Thank you again, and Rob, off to you.
Well, thank you so much to all of the HR Passion Series speakers. It is not easy to get up there and do a talk in 9 minutes and make it concise and clear. So my hope is everyone can share their love on the chat, but also even one of the most favorite things you take away from those 4 speakers. Again, really appreciate the talks there from everyone. So moving on, we wanted to wrap up today's conversation with a panel discussion, COVID-19's impact on workplace mental health. So I'm going to ask all of our wonderful panelists that you see on the screen there to start coming into the frame here and sharing hopefully your video and your audio. And what I want to start the introduction is with Charles Boyer. He's going to be moderating the discussion and panel. No pressure, Charles. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation. So I will, wait for all of you to join, and we can get started.
Rob, Bill, Stephen, just thank you. It feels really that you have a community here together. So I thought that was fantastic. And I just want to pick up on the passion speakers and something that resonated with me from each of the speakers that ties into the conversation that we're about to have. Jane, I thought it was incredibly wise that you started by talking about evolving. It's something that resonates with me. I'm evolving as of the conference board. We do in-person conferences, don't have a lot of experience doing this digitally. And my favorite song, Never Be the Same by Tritonal. So evolving. Michael, the unforeseen consequences that is going to come out of this resonates with some of the conversations we had with you, Mario. So we'll pick up on that in a bit. Katrina, thank you for sharing your lived experience. Bill, I think you'll really resonate with Katrina and your lived experience and developing that growth mindset. So something we'll pick up on. And your new book, Stop Hiding and Start Living. And Alicia, the model you showed around safety and psychological safety being at the core of the engine that turns the business of productivity. Shai, something that you've talked a lot about is, what is the most important thing? Is it work or is it well-being? And, something that resonated with me, that's something you said. So just briefly want to introduce our panelists. So Shai Maladina has a deep experience in labor relations and is in charge of the wellness program for Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation. Mario Burrell, a senior executive within government and has been the ombudsman for mental health and well-being with ISED since 2018. And Dr. Bill Howitt, who is a disruptor to this panel and is a chief of research at the conference board leads a lot of our speaking engagement, applied research. And next week being Mental Health Week, Bill's launching his new book, Stop Hiding, Start Living, which is available at billhowitt.com. So incredible to have you all here. Just wanted to get a quick reflection from you all on how your organizations have been impacted by COVID-19 and the steps that you're taking. With CMHC, you know, I've seen the resources you have around, I can't pay my mortgage and what are my options? The Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. So Shai, maybe just to speak about how it's impacted your organization.
Yeah, I'd like to start off by saying, so we already worked in a results-only work environment. So our employees are able to work where they want and when they want. So our company was already equipped and we already had the IT infrastructure that I think a lot of people struggled with to get everybody up and running, working from home. So for us, that was pretty smooth. However, the crisis affected a lot of our priorities and the way we support Canadians. So kind of as Charles just mentioned, we kind of had to really quickly and swiftly shift gears as part of the federal team to support Canadians and the economy. So, you know, as Charles mentioned, providing relief for housing, supporting the liquidity of financial markets, ensuring that banks and mortgage lenders are not proceeding with foreclosures, making sure people have a roof over their head during this time, and also promoting the suspension of tenant evictions. So we've had to stand up a significant number of programs in a really, really short period of time.
Thank you, Shai. And Mario, maybe you can speak a little bit about, you know, how I said Innovation Science Economic Development Canada is helping with, you know, self-employed professionals, managing your business and reimagining maybe businesses in new markets that are developing.
Exactly, you got it. You know, as we listen to the news every night and we hear that small and medium-sized enterprise are getting support from the government of Canada, and you see a lot of the announcements made by the Prime Minister, one of the departments that is behind the economy is my department. So as you can imagine, the pressures, you know, that senior management and senior officials and every single employee in the department are working like day in, day out in making sure that the economy is still running. And a lot of questions right now that we hear from people is, what is it going to happen in the future? Are we going to get back to normal? Is the economy going to get back to normal? And all we can say is that we support it the best as we can. And I'm very amazed by the quality of what I've seen so far. Like, the government has turned around really quickly in order to be able to support the economy. And when I look at the employees at my department, we're about 6,300 employees from coast to coast. And some of the discussions that we've had with senior management over the last couple of weeks or even months since I started my position as ombudsman is our capacity to be agile, equipped, and inclusive, which are pretty much buzzwords that are being used by PCO, the Privy Council Office. And what I've seen so far is, yes, our department has been very agile. Like, all the you know, to Shara's point, all of the technology is available. I think the challenge for us in the department was more of a culture change, where, you know, some managers might have been more uncomfortable in managing people from distance. Now we are seeing a reality. We are right into reality right now. And what I've seen is, I'll be able to speak a little bit more about this later, but what I've seen is people are getting slowly adapted to using these new technologies, and managers are getting more and more used to managing their employees from distance. But all that being said, I would say as ombudsman, I've seen the volume of clients more than doubling coming to me. So the distress is there, and the feeling of isolation is obviously one of the main barriers right now for people to be able to, you know, being comfortable in working remotely. So that would be the gist of it. There's obviously a lot more. I'll be speaking to it.
Thank you, Mario. And for you, Bill, I reflect, we had one of the last in-person meetings with the conference board in March. And immediately, Bill, you said, let's get a daily video out, and you've been doing that for, since the beginning. So, I just reflecting on that experience, Bill.
Yeah, I think the purpose is, like, I've been a little bit older than some people doing this. I've been in mental health for about 30 years. And one of the things, I've spent a lot of time in the crisis intervention world. So I was there for World Trade. I was there for Swiss Air. I've been doing crisis intervention, suicide, all the things that people don't want to talk about for a long time, forensic psychology. And I've never in my life experienced anything like I did now. Is because the whole country, every Canadian's under siege by something, and it's invisible. And what happens is called hedonic adaptation, is that we have a tendency to get actually used to things that are good in our life and used to things that are bad in our life. So for example, if you win $1 million within a year, someone that wins $1 million, they get kind of used to that, and they go back, slip back to their old set point. When we have what's going on right now, my big concern, the reason I did this, is because I know people's motor, whether they know it or not, there's a bit of adrenaline, and people are running. So we're almost like we're talking about it with our good friend. We're almost like in theater right now, like if you're in a war. Because basically, if you make a mistake at this point in time, if you don't have the antibodies, by the way, we don't know if that works yet because of the World Health Organization where we're at, people have that anticipatory anxiety. Some people will stuff it, and some people are going to have what is called hypervigilance. So the reason I did this is because I want to start to normalize the conversation, the experience around mental health, is because what happens is many people don't have a frame of reference. Like, bad things happen in other parts of the world. We have situational crises, we have floods, and we have a tornado here and there. We might actually have some, seismic activity on the West Coast. We'll have, a spill here or there. But a pandemic, and understanding what the impact is, my concern is, and the reason I'm doing it too, Charles, is to get people talking, because stigma is a big issue. Mm-hmm. And lots of people, and I'll say this to start moving on, Charles, is that lots of us actually start putting, you think about physical health, lots of us will start to put body weight on, and we won't pay attention. And we get used to that. And we go 5 pounds and 10 pounds and 15. The challenge with stress that's happening right now is accumulating. And people that aren't used to it are accumulating. Now we're going to have lots of folks. So, one chap earlier was talking about addictive disorders, and I could relate to that. I did my postdoc at UCLA in addictive disorders, and I can relate to that challenge, and I can relate to the obesity. I can relate to that because people are trying to cope. But ultimately, what I'm hoping we'll be able to do in this conversation is be able to demystify and provide some hope for people that the great thing about human beings, is that I've been around folks. I was at World Trade and different things. We have an amazing amount of resiliency. There is, and the amount of us to be able to bounce back. What we need to do is give people a frame of reference to interpolate what's happening to them so they can actually normalize. The reality is, what is not going to be normal for the next near future. And I don't want to hear post-COVID. We got to stop that. I'm hearing people do that. Until they have an antibody, till they have a viral, that's post. We're going to go now back to what's called return to workplace. We need to be mindful that if we screw this up, the amount of energy that's gone into people to get to this point, and the amount of capital we've burned, if we don't pay attention to this, because the real wave is going to be mental health, and that's going to be the big impact of this situation is going to be January, February, March. It's not now. It's going to be down the road. Fatigue's going to be hitting people soon.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Bill. Brought the big guns out early on. It's so great. There's so many great ideas. I want to reflect on how your lived experience has prepared you for this. So you're all health, well-being, and mental health leaders. How have you drawn on your experiences to take on this challenge?
You go first. I'm nice.
I'll be the two sharers first.
Sure. I'm happy to go first. I think for me, being a parent has really kind of helped me. Something that I learned really early on with a young kid is, you don't have to be perfect all the time. You don't have to always have all of the answers. You don't have to cook those perfect meals and have those great schedules and all those activities. All you need to do is make sure that your child feels loved and safe. And, you know, through this crisis, that's taught me a lot, that in our workplaces, in supporting our people leaders, and even at home, making sure that, you know, the people that we work with, the people that we support, and our families and our children, they feel safe and they feel loved. I think that goes a long way in supporting people's mental health and helping each other get through the crisis.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mario, or you or I? Age before beauty? What are we doing here?
Yeah, so for me, it's been a big difference. I'm now working from my cottage. I came here for skiing back on March 13th in Mont Tremblant, and actually I've been here since then, not even being able to get back home in Gatineau. So working remotely, now I think I'm getting there. I'm getting a little bit like an expert. I feel like I'm an expert. I'm getting there. I would say that I've been listening to a lot of videos, including videos from Bill, because he's giving like fantastic advice on how to take care of yourself. And since I've been watching these videos, I can tell you every morning I have this walk of 45 minutes. My wife asked me for another walk during lunchtime, and in the evening, another walk. So I've never walked as much as before in any time before in my life. So thanks, Bill, for that good advice on your videos. I'm taking good care of myself. But I think what has changed for me is how can I capture the distress of people as part of my ombudsman's role? And that is not so easy. I find that the best way to do that so far has been to do active listening to any people that are reaching out to me. And not jumping too quickly and giving options or advice. Or what I've noticed, the advice is so much available everywhere on the web. It's amazing. There's no lack of advice. I think where there might be a lack, it might be in the active listening, being able to listen to people and provide them with that safe space where they can express what they're going through right now. And if it's only that 1 hour or 1 hour and a half that you spend with them, I think it has a lot of value. That's what I've noticed on my side.
Yeah, and thanks very much, Mario, for those kind words. For me, I think I'm a little bit different than some people in this conversation. As I said, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen patients for 30 years. One of my PhDs in counseling psych, my other one's in IO psych, and I'm working in and out of organizations. But I'm a person who's been traumatized myself, and I've been a person lived my entire life with a mental illness. And one of the things is when you actually have your world disrupted and actually catastrophized, and I lived in 12 years of pure fear. And when you have those experiences, you draw back into your memory banks, not savoring the negative, but savoring that I have a lot of empathy, understanding that when people actually have a difference between what they want and what they have, we need to be careful to project our expectations in other human beings. If you're doing really, really well, good for you. Some people may not be. And so one of the things about us is having more tolerance and patience. If anything just come out of this conversation with COVID-19, I'm hoping, is that I've been hammering at this for years, that mental health and mental illness are two different phenomena. And most organizations have tried to do something around mental illness by having EAP, which is important. Train their managers what to do around duty inquire. Do some little things, maybe throw in the random resiliency course for shits and giggles, and then that's my mental health strategy. And what we have to understand is that human beings, very much like occupational health and safety, mental health is an infinite resource. No, it's a finite resource, and human beings will vacillate back and forth. So I'm hoping, Mario, that this conversation is that it actually might be reducing some of the stigma and actually helping people to actually understand that we are actually fragile. I'll give you a quick example. My just cause in 2020, I was talking to a really dear friend in Vancouver, Charles, out speaking, and someone came up to me. We were having this conversation, and this is one of these things where, you know, when you're ready, the teacher shows up. And I'm sitting there, I wrote a book on relationship survival guide. I've spent years doing marriage counseling and all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden somebody said to me, said, Bill, what do you think about this thing called loneliness and isolation? This is back in October. Mm-hmm. And I go, let me think about it. I wrote something, I looked and I had something on it. I go, do you know what? They go, what? we're actually, the DSM-5 doesn't have isolation and loneliness, either does the ICD-9. And what I realized that what the real issue is, we're saying it wrong. It's the absence of social connections. And so what happens is that I realize when you go to Tim Hortons and you see Jackie, hey Jack, how you doing? You check in and you go see the guard, and you have these little micro touches every day that actually give us connectivity. And then when you create this massive disruption, the people that perhaps their job and their people are the most significant emotional connections they have each day. What's happening, we're using the word loneliness and isolation, we're actually confusing it. Isolation is barriers. Loneliness is the affect. So the barrier right now is objective barriers called COVID-19. You're stuck in your house if you want to stay alive and actually not hurt other people and do your job. The loneliness is but the antidote to this is social connections. And that's what I started in January with the Globe and Mail. We have a survey. And one of the things I'd like to do, Charles, is get that out to people on this, is that they can have a survey to evaluate the perceived isolation load with the loneliness, to have a frame of reference, to understand they're different, and to be aware that there's the algorithm for mental health is physical health, mental fitness, and social connections. And people like me need to do a better job in reminding employers to focus on social connections. And that's where I feel I need to do a better job. I got to get that out and talk about that more, is because there's probably nothing you can do more to help someone's psychology than have a safe, authentic connection where you feel valued when you're around them. That's important.
Yes, I very much like this, what
great.
you just said, Bill. If I can just give an example of social connection, not so long ago, I was asked to do not a panel discussion, it was more of a town hall with a group of, I think, about 75 people. And it was interesting to see that this town hall was managed in a way that it almost felt that you were present, you were there. As part of the programming, there was the awards of recognition for mental health in the workplace. And I thought this is interesting because you are giving an award for mental health using like technology, and everybody could see each other like through MS Teams. And I thought this is good practice. So I sent an email to the senior director just to say congratulations, because you are keeping that social connection, even using technology. And I think from my side, I've been trying to keep that connection with my own team. Every Monday we have our staff meeting, and during the week, if there's a bilat, we try to keep that connection going. It's so important. And I've seen a difference in the team, like they feel engaged, they feel they understand the direction. So the feeling of isolation is obviously there, like they're feeling alone. But through that technology, I think we can keep that human connection as much as we can.
I love that, Mario and Shai. I think it must resonate with you too, and the work that you're doing and the storytelling that's emerging out of CMHC.
Yeah, so we constantly say that these concepts, all the things that Bill is saying, they're not HR initiatives. They have to kind of permeate the fabric of the company. And so for us, we've had excellent support from our CEO and our senior leaderships. For example, talking about, you know, their vulnerabilities, how they're coping in this situation, how it's okay not to be okay. I think consistently, our CEO has started every message through this crisis by saying, we don't expect you to work at 100%. We expect you to look after yourself and your loved ones as your #1 priority. Work comes next. Giving examples of how, you know, they're coping with kids at home, interruptions on, you know, important calls and things like that. And showing, and being vulnerable and being authentic through this, I think builds that trust, builds that safety, so that when employees are not feeling at their best, they will take those opportunities to reach out to each other and to their leaders for guidance and support. It speaks to how we're bridging the gap with those social connections, but also creating a safe work environment for folks during this very difficult time. I would also offer that being able to work, I think, during this time is a privilege. It gives us some focus, something meaningful to do sometimes, and it makes us feel like we're contributing to the greater good. I know that one of the things that CMHC started a couple of weeks ago is people are looking for ways to help. People are looking to say, how can I volunteer with my community? What can I do to support other people?
Exactly.
So what we're doing is we're actually inviting people to share their stories. We had somebody share, so we, like performance pay, people get that. Well, somebody thought to themselves, hey, I'm in a position of privilege, and shared anonymously, they're sharing their bonus with the food bank because there are so many people that are not able to feed their families during this crisis. We have a Zumba instructor on staff, and so she's offering free classes a couple days a week to everybody, and you can see the kids and the spouses and the whole family participating. And also to Bill's point about mental health and making sure that those connections are there, we're actually doing mindfulness sessions a couple days a week, encouraging people not to overwork and try to over-contribute, to make sure that people are taking time for themselves, as Mario's doing with all his walks. We're taking time, we're trying to encourage employees to also pause. We're not expecting people to run at full speed, looking after their families and loved ones, run at full speed on a work platform. This is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And so we need to make sure that we're taking those pauses and times to recharge. So I think as a company, we're trying to make that a priority for our employees as well.
Thank you. Great insights. I just want to pick up on a few things that emerged. I think, Mario, earlier you talked about your no wrong door policy. And in so many conversations, you just say, okay, no, that's an EAP conversation. Whereas you're taking the time, no, you went to, this isn't, my expertise is not as a clinician, but I want to talk to you. So you're not just automatically pushing them away. And then, I think Bill with Katrina from Shopify too talked about school wasn't for me. She was diagnosed with dyslexia. And then talked about that growth mindset, and I think there's resonates with a lot that you from your lived experience. And one of the questions was around your videos, Bill, and those are available on the Conference Board website. So I'm happy to get those out. We'd like to pivot. I know we've about 10 minutes left. We've had a lot of great insights for a quick lightning round, and you've touched on a whole bunch. In this moment, to help all the folks on the line, quickly, one thing you think that they should focus on. And you may have already touched on it, maybe just reiterate that, and then we're going to move to the next session.
I'm happy to go, and then you guys can jump in. I was actually asked this question this morning by an organization that accessed about 1.2 million people, fairly substantial organization. And they called me this morning and said, Bill, we want to do one thing. What is it? And I said, it's not a program. It's not a policy. It's to provide the opportunity for facilitate a two-way accountability, where basically what you do is you encourage every employee in the organization to develop their own personalized mental fitness plan. Provide them with a frame of reference of what the heck a mental fitness plan is, and not expect that everyone needs to do the same thing. So for example, under the physical health pillar, let people realize that the mind body, make sure they understand exercise, diet, rest, nutrition, lifestyle, make sure they understand that serotonin is not made in your head, it's made in your gut. So what you put in your mouth is going to make some difference. Educate them on that. Then let them make a plan. With mental fitness, I've written in the Globe and Mail, I have over 300 micro skills. Yes, meditation something, mindfulness something, deep breathing. If you're anxious, you need to work on your amygdala part of your brain. You need to learn how to do deep breathing. If you're running your brain forward, you need to know how to deconstruct your thinking. So you might need different cognitive reframing. Get techniques that help you to do mental fitness. Very much like a Stairmaster. If I want to get ripped, I got to do something with intention. It takes 8 to 10 minutes to 12 to work on your mental fitness. The last thing is social connections. Someone asked a question and I want to make sure I answer it around micro-touching. The micro-touching part of it's really important. In the absence of micro-touching, you'll need to, with intention, start to do that. So for example, go back to your old high school, university, college, friends, and start calling people you haven't interacted with a while, provided that you feel comfortable enough to self-advocate to reach out. Many people right now, I'm getting calls from people I haven't even talked to in, like, I can't even tell you how long, out of the blue, say, hey, Bill, how you doing? I'm going, this is, and they remind me sometimes who they are because I can't remember. Then I go, oh, geez, and all of a sudden I get a good feeling, they get a good feeling. So in long and short of it, Charles, if I was to have power, I'd have every CEO help every employee design their own mental fitness so they can learn to charge the battery, because there's things the employer can do that can charge it and stop from draining and vice versa. That's what I would do.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. Shai, Mario?
I would say, you know, for me, we need to continue to be agile. I think there are a lot of unknowns as we move through this crisis. As a company, we want to encourage our leaders and our employees to be as agile as possible. The way, to me, something that really hits home is how the silos have been broken down and how people are coming together from all parts of our company to work together. To me, this is something to take forward as we move through this crisis. So I think also recognizing that people are going to move through this crisis in different ways, and recognizing that there is not a one-size-fits-all solution. And so again, that agility comes into play, making sure that we're constantly taking the pulse of our organization to see where people are at and adjusting what we're putting out to support employees. I think regular, timely communication, regular supports to employees. I mean, we've instituted almost bi-weekly calls with the leadership. We've you know, open door policy. People are writing to our CEO. He's responding. So, you know, we're making sure that we're constantly, that dialogue is open, that we're being as flexible and agile as possible to support different needs, and to make sure that people know, again, kind of to Mario's point, there is no wrong door to knock on.
Yeah.
There's always somebody who's going to respond if you reach out. I think that's
awesome.
Cool.
Hey, and Mario, quick last word here on this topic.
Thank you. I think we need to humanize the workplace, humanize the public service. I like to say to people every time I speak that we're not managing files, we're managing people. And when I say managing people, I don't mean it in the bad way. We're managing relationships. And in my dream, I would like that first meeting, once we're all back into the workplace, to be about the human sides of things and not about the work. I would say to all of our listeners today to take the time, build a list as to what they would want to discuss in that first meeting back to work, and not talk about the work files and the workload and the stress and all the things that we haven't done. It's not about that. It's all about building that solid working relationship. Because I can say as ombudsman, I'm a little bit concerned about the return to work. What is this gonna mean? And I know I've done a Q&A with Bill, and I was very interested in seeing your response back. I think every workplace right now should evaluate the impact of people returning to work and have at least have a plan in their mind. How is this going to happen? How people are going to interact with each other in the future? I think it is so important, so important.
For sure. So, and it resonates with Michael talking to the passion speakers, is start with the end in mind as well. So thank you, Mario. And you'll see Mario and Bill, that'll be out next week, Mario, that Q&A that you had with Bill?
Yes.
Okay, so stay tuned for that, everybody. Rob, do you mind launching the poll that we created? The second one? We skipped the first one.
Yeah, sounds good. I can do that. It should.
So,
now.
Okay, so everybody, would like to ask you the impact you see as when you return to the workplace Will you have no change? Will you be cautious or hesitant about the spread? Will you be strained or concerned about the future? Or do you, are you going to be significantly impacted? Like, have you experienced the loss of a loved one or a traumatic exposure? So we'll let that run for a minute. And I'd like to start with Shai and Mario. For your organizations, what do you think is that, where do you think your organization will fall? Where will most people come back? Maybe start with you, Shai.
So I think there's going to be employees in all the categories.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be key, is recognizing the fact that there's not going to be a one size fits all. And it's important that we have supports in place geared for the people that will fall in all those categories.
Yeah.
I think it's
not just like a one size fits all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We gotta, everybody's gonna emerge from this crisis differently in their own time and their own way. We kind of all got thrown in it almost all at the same time, but how we come out of it is going to be dependent on our own circumstances and our own personal situations. And so we need to be flexible and supportive and recognize that it's going to be different for everybody.
Awesome. Mario, how about, what are your thoughts? Same idea, or do you think that one will stand out over the others?
Yeah, now that I see the answers, it can be a little bit painted, but I agree with Shai. It's probably all of these answers are valid. It's really hard to evaluate how people feel right now, but I would say it's how we respond to all of these different mental health conditions that will make the success in the workplace. And actually, I'm looking at these answers right now, and it reminds me that we launched a survey to all of our employees as of yesterday. And this will help the organization in capturing what are the top 3 or 4 issues that are causing stress right now. So I think as an employer, when we talked about being agile, we need to capture what it is that is affecting employees right now. And so I kind of like these questions. I'll take good notes of them.
Okay, thank you, Mario. Bill, I'd like to ask you just on that cautious of the spread, one thing you'd recommend to folks, because that seems to be the highest percentage. So in 1 minute, what would you recommend?
What if I don't want to?
Now it's 50 seconds.
No, I think the big one on that one is that cautious people need to know what the rules are going to be, what the expectations are, and how, from a restorative justice perspective, if someone wrongs someone and creates a mental harm, you need to understand, if you violate my 6 feet, for example, Ford has bracelets now in the factory that people come within 6 feet, they vibrate to help people become unconsciously aware of boundaries. We need to be aware that some people are going to be more hyper vigilant than others, and we need to respect that some people are going to have more anxiety. And it doesn't mean that they're trying to be weak mentally or whiny or etc. We need to ensure we're not doing harm. That's about psychological safety, is not doing harm to other people. So have those conversations with people about what this means and be able to fix things so that you can realize this is about learning, not being about punitive. Teach people how to feel safe, the wrongdoers, the right doers, because everybody at the end of the day wants to be safe. That's at the end of the day. So just keep that universal.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. As we close this down, I don't see any questions in the chat box, but Rob, if there's questions, we could stay on for a few minutes. Just in closing, Shai, Mario, Bill, this is an energizing conversation. It's kind of a Super Bowl for someone in their sweatpants almost every day. It's a lot of fun to do this with you all. So thank you. Thank you, Rob and team, for organizing this. We are launching a survey with the Mental Health Commission of Canada to tackle just this. And this will be released likely tomorrow or Thursday. So stay tuned for that. Rob will send that in the link. So Rob, is there any, or maybe you have questions you'd like to ask the panel before we close it down?
Yeah, there's no questions that are popping up in the Q&A. I'm just looking at the chat now. It looks like a lot of just validation in terms of a lot of the comments and great ideas that came from this. But I'm not seeing anything pop up from that perspective. Yeah, and I also want to be sensitive to people's time. It's 2:30, but nothing's on the Q&A at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, so yeah, I guess thanks, Rob. This was fantastic. Thanks for having us. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Great. Well, thank you so much to the panel. I really appreciate the time and effort being involved. Last things I just wanted to mention before we take off today is that first thing I just wanted to thank a number of you. First off, the speakers donating your time. I know everyone's really busy, and even beyond busy at this moment. Just donating your time for that. Also to the WorkTango and HR Gazette team putting on these events and promoting it and finding speakers takes a lot of effort. And also all of you as well. Your attendance, your level of just attention and just communication through the chat, just being involved and engaged was something that we really wanted at the end of the day. So, you know, this is the first time we've done a virtual event. We're figuring it out. We're doing 3 more between the 13th, May 26th, and June 10th. You can see the dates there. Hopefully, this is a community that continues to grow and move on and provide a lot of value, which is what we're trying to do. So last thing I just wanted to say, I got people from around the world I'm noticing coming up here. Again, thank you to our sponsors. This is the last one, WorkTango and HR Gazette for putting it on, and then Gallagher, Lighthouse Labs, Human World Capital, and Thorpe Benefits. I think there's still a number of people on right now. So before you leave, maybe just in the chat, what was one thing that you were educated on? What was engaging to you? What inspired you to do something different? Again, that's the reason why we put these on. We just, again, really appreciate everyone's time and effort. Bill, any last things to add before we take off today?
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Thanks for doing this and allowing the opportunity for people to get some different insights and to process. So grateful to be invited.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Rob, if I can just add to that, I recently got the opportunity to interview Bill, Mario, Alicia, and Michael. The interviews with Mario and with Michael are already live on the HR Chat show. Just Google HR Chat and you'll find those. The interviews with Alicia and Bill are going live next week. There are some really great insights on those, so please do check those out. For those of you who've enjoyed today, please share it on social media. The hashtag is InnovateWork. The next event we've got is May 13th. And in the follow-up email that we're going to share with everybody, obviously we don't charge your attendees to join this, but we will mention a couple of causes that we support. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps you'd consider donating to those.
Awesome. I also realized when I said, Bill, you have anything to add? I was talking to Bill Banham, but I love Bill Howard just jumped in and came and it was perfect.
That's my name.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, Bill. 2 Bills, I can't handle it. Perfect. Well, again, thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day and week. I don't even know what day it is, I'm not going to lie. But stay healthy, stay safe, and all the best, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye. Take care, everybody. Thank you for having us.